Hey, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Excited to be here with you. This webinar is called Create Multimedia Opportunities in a PBL Cycle, Project-Based Learning Cycle. And my name is Stu Jernigan. I am an education specialist with WeVideo and former high school humanities teacher and digital learning specialist from the Bay Area. And excited to be here with y'all to talk about leveraging video creation within the context of project-based learning. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about today is scope and sequence for a media project. And in this case, really looking at like a long-form media project. One that's going to sort of develop over the course of several weeks. One in which students are going to shoot their own video footage, capture their own original media, and then stitch together a video using their original media. So I love this graphic from KQED that sort of lays out the sequence of a long form media production timeline. This one unfolds over the course of 6 weeks. Yours could be a different timeline. It could be over the course of 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So you could adjust accordingly. But the important thing is sort of like the sequence of events. So in this case, week one would be sort of introduction to the project and then exploration of core content that students are going to learn in the context of this project. Week two would be pre-production. So that's where students would then conduct research to dive deeper into core content and extend their content knowledge. And then they'd be sort of starting to craft their story. So they'd be writing, scripting, and ultimately developing a plan for media creation, which would be where things like storyboarding would come in. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Week three would be production. So that's going to be your media creation. That's where students are going to be shooting their own footage, recording, filming, etc. And that might be a time to engage in an activity where you're facilitating self-assessment or peer feedback and critique. Students might look at each other's storyboards or their scripts and give each other feedback on that part of the project. Week four is going to be post-production. Week four is going to be post-production. So that's where students have captured their footage, and now they're going to be editing. So they're going to be taking that footage, building their sequence, editing together their final product, their video. Week five is going to be distribution. And so that's where you might have students to engage in some form of marketing, right? And this is a good time to think about how student media is going to be shared. So you might organize an event. This could be just a simple film screening in class. Maybe you host a film screening in the auditorium. Maybe you work with a local theater and rent that out for a night, or they donate it for a night. You could invite the school community, teachers, other people from the community, and maybe have like a student panel Q&A. I've seen teachers have students present their films at a school-wide exhibition where parents and community members were invited for students to present their work. So you can kind of think about that. Maybe students create like flyers for their movie, and advertise the event. You can really get creative with that piece. And then finally, week six is going to be reflections. That's going to be final assessments. That's going to be using a rubric to grade student films, and then having students engage in a reflection on their learning and really facilitate that metacognitive piece. So what is project-based learning? Project-based learning is a teaching method in which students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge. PBL Works has identified these 7 elements of gold standard PBL design, which I think I think this is a really great framework for thinking about designing a project-based learning unit. And they tend to pair really nicely with media projects. So their sort of 7 elements are the following. So we have a challenging problem or question. So the project is framed by a meaningful problem to be solved or a question to answer at the appropriate level of challenge. We have sustained inquiry, so students are engaging in a rigorous, extended process of posing questions, finding resources, and applying information. We have authenticity. So the project involves real world context, tasks, and tools, quality standards, or impact, or the project speaks to personal concerns, interests, and issues in the students' lives. Student voice and choice. So students make some decisions about the project, including how they work and what they create, and express their own ideas in their own voice. We have reflection. So students and teachers reflect on their learning, the effectiveness of their inquiry and project activities, the quality of student work, and obstacles that arise and strategies for overcoming them. So that's that sort of week 6 piece that we identified, where students are engaging in reflection. And you could use video as a medium for that, right? In addition to or in place of writing, you could have students record a voice recording or record a webcam recording, reflecting on their process, reflecting on their learning. And then that can become a nice dynamic piece that could be added to like a digital portfolio, for example. If they're going to have a portfolio page for this project, they could have the video that they create on that portfolio page. They could have, media, images, and text detailing their process of creation, collaboration, etc. And then they could have this webcam recording reflecting on their learning and on their process. Um, I did want to also mention for student voice and choice, of course, this idea of students expressing their own ideas in their own voice. Media and video and podcasting are a great medium for accomplishing that. Critique and revision. So students give, receive, and apply feedback to improve their process and products. We talked about running a peer feedback routine during the pre-production process where students are writing and storyboarding. They could give feedback on their script, on their storyboard. You also, just like we sort of have students write a rough draft and then get feedback and then revise. When it comes time to editing, you can have students edit together a rough draft and then run a peer feedback routine where they give each other feedback on their rough draft, their first one of their early iterations of their video. And then finally, public products. So students make their project work public by sharing it with and explaining or presenting it to people beyond the classroom. Of course, video is a great medium for this because it's a form of media that can be shared broadly through sharing a video file, posting to a web page, etc. And it's in a dynamic medium that people are interested in consuming. So it's a great way to build in public product and provide an opportunity for students to reach an audience. Okay, so just to break these components down a little bit more in the context of an example. So we have two of these um, features of gold standard project-based learning that PBL Works has identified: a challenging problem or question, and then public product. So if we think about, for example, one of the projects that we have in the We Video Assignment Ideas Library, this digital citizenship videos assignment in which students make videos uh, communicating what they've learned about digital citizenship. A project like that could be framed around a challenging problem or question like, how can we influence our school community to practice positive digital citizenship, right? That can be sort of the big um, question or problem or objective. And then students really have to engage in the thinking around how they can do that, how they can influence their school community, right? So you're not giving that answer for them ahead of time. You're having them engage in the critical process of thinking about how they can make an impact and take the content that they're learning in class and do something productive with it, right? And so one way that they could do that is through creating a public product, such as informative or persuasive digital citizenship videos that then they could use to launch a school-wide digital citizenship campaign. So maybe those are like PSAs around different digital citizenship topics. Maybe they're students giving like advice to their peers around how to practice good digital citizenship, right? It's using video to educate their peers and then try to influence them towards being more productive members of their community through their behavior and activities online. And I like to share this graphic from Ron Berger in his book Leaders of Their Own Learning. He talks about the impact of audience on student engagement and motivation. And so, sort of at the bottom of that hierarchy of audience is presenting to a teacher to fulfill a requirement, which is oftentimes sort of traditionally what we ask students to do. complete this assignment, turn it into the teacher, teacher grades it, turns it back, and that's the end of the loop. But if, as we see the audience become more broad and more authentic, we tend to see student motivation and engagement increase. So as students can present to parents or the broader school community, an audience beyond the school, people capable of critiquing their work, such as experts in the field, or ultimately students having the opportunity to be of service in the world, like making videos about climate change or other issues that are important to them, that impact them or their community, and then being able to share that media with an audience. In a way that can affect change either through that audience's behavior, or maybe they're presenting to something like a local school board or a city council, people who are in positions of power to influence change on the issues they're making media about. So that's just sort of an example of how we could weave some of these elements into a media project. Now I want to talk a little bit more about like a media project flow. So sort of coming back to that graphic of, week 1, week 2, week 3, pre-production, well, core content knowledge and exploration, pre-production, production, post-production, and then reflection or distribution and reflection. So some sort of activities that you might run in the context of that flow. One thing that I'd encourage people to do, and you know, project-based learning design talks about a project launch, right? Having an activity that you use that is going to drive engagement for students and launch the project, introduce them to the project in a really like engaging and exciting way that's going to get them excited about what they're going to do. Part of that project launch could be, and certainly early in the project, whether it's part of the project launch or not, it's important to present models to students of what they're going to create. So you might share, a couple different examples of videos that are examples similar to what they're going to create, and then run an activity where they're identifying the features of a high quality model. And so you might use something like a See, Think, Wonder routine. Um, to help them identify the features of high quality work, um, the impact of those features on the message or the audience, and then generate some questions that might drive their research or their inquiry. So, for example, I'm going to share a video that somebody created for our certified creator course we just launched for educators. This is something that a course that educators can take to learn how to create videos in WeVideo. And this is a pretty excellent submission. And if you're watching this and want to contribute to the chat, or just think about what are the features that make this a really strong video. So let's take a look.
Majestic and mighty. Elephants have roamed the earth for millions of years. Today, we're taking a quick journey into the world of these gentle giants. Elephants, known for their remarkable intelligence, live in complex social structures. These family groups are led by a matriarch, the eldest and often wisest female, who guides her family with knowledge passed down through generations. Their trunks, an extension of their upper lip and nose, are marvels of nature's engineering. With over 40,000 muscles, trunks serve as a tool for drinking, grabbing, and communicating. These are just a few interesting facts about elephants, the gentle giants that continue to fascinate and inspire us. Let's find out more next time as we continue to explore the wonders of the animal kingdom.
Okay, so there's our example, right? And we've got a number of elements that make this a strong example, right? We've got a really strong narrative; it's really well written. The voice recording is clear. The pacing is strong. The visuals really they match the content, but they also sort of elevate the message or enhance the message. We've got the use of music. The sound is really well balanced. The music matches the content. We've got some transitions in there that work really well. Use of text is really clear. Um, So a lot of different features that make this a high quality example. And so, you could run an activity like this in the classroom, have students brainstorm the features, use sticky notes or use a Jamboard or, whatever you want to use for that, small group discussions, etc. And then we will not show that video for this one. And then you could take students brainstorm and the features that they identified and then construct a rubric out of that, right? You could construct a formative rubric out of the features that they've identified, that then could be used as you sort of iterate through the project, right? So you could take that formative rubric and then have students use that both to plan their own media as they're sort of planning their own project, but you could also use that formative rubric as part of a peer feedback routine. I love this model here for peer feedback, this tag feedback model, where students tell what they like, they ask a question, and then they give advice or a suggestion. And I like to encourage students to be kind, helpful, and specific in the feedback that they're giving, and just emphasize the importance of teaching students how to give constructive peer feedback. It's not something that we naturally do, it's a skill that we need to teach. So if you have run peer feedback in the past and thought, well, students didn't really give each other strong feedback, give it another try, but make sure that you teach them what constructive feedback looks like and give them a model like the tag feedback. And then in this case, using a formative rubric that uses features that they identified, right? A rubric that they constructed to give each other feedback can be a very helpful framework for soliciting constructive feedback. So you might run that peer feedback routine on the script. If whether you do or not, after scripting it, after students sort of write their script, plan their story, it's useful to have them construct a storyboard. And a storyboard is basically taking their script, what they plan to say, breaking that down into phases of the story, and then planning out the visuals that they want to pair with what they're saying. And so if they've written a script and they're going to record a voice recording and their video is going to be voice recording driven or narrative driven, they can plan the images that are going to go with the different elements or different points of that voice recording or narrative. If they've captured original footage, like more documentary style, let's say they've filmed some interviews, they've captured some live footage. Maybe some of that live footage has people talking and or like action that becomes part of the narrative. For example, like with an interview, let's say, maybe they've got a video clip of an interview and that's sort of driving the narrative, but you don't want the whole video to just be this person talking in front of a screen. You want to layer over some B-roll of other video clips, other imagery that matches what they're talking about. The storyboard can be used in that way as well, planning out the B-roll that you're going to match with the interview footage. So the storyboard can be useful for a number of different contexts, whether it's a narrative driven film with a voice recording, a documentary style film with original footage, or like a narrative film we see in like Hollywood, like a short story, for example. You want to plan for filming those scenes and the kinds of shots that you want to get to build that narrative. Um, So then, as you're sort of running through a media project, another sort of idea that I want to introduce is this idea that video and media production in general can be used in a variety of places within that unit. In addition to students creating their culminating project in the form of a video, you might also have students, for example, we talked about recording a webcam reflection at the end of the project. As they're building vocabulary throughout the unit, you might have them create a GIF like the one we see here, that would be aligned to a 4-quadrant Freire model vocabulary frame. Um, so lots of different ways you might have them use like the screencasting tool and the drawing tool to visualize their thinking. I would encourage you all to explore the Assignment Ideas Library, which has a number of media creation activities that could be used at different phases of a unit or project or lesson to really infuse creativity throughout your classroom. And we talked about this a little bit, but again, just as you're sort of designing a media project or a project based learning unit in which students are going to create media, it's important to think ahead about how students are going to share their media in the form of a public product. Who is the audience going to be? How are they going to share it? We talked about some ideas earlier. In addition to those, you might also I've seen people build websites and then post student media to the web page, and then that can be something that's publicly shared. There are also like contests that different organizations run. NPR, for example, runs a student podcasting challenge every year, and the winner, I think it's available to fourth through 12th graders off the top of my head. The winner has their podcast aired live on the radio on NPR. So you might also look like for some of those opportunities to really build in a broad, authentic audience for student media. And then again, think about a rubric, constructing a rubric, and using sort of the features that we talked about before. You might even provide the rubric at the beginning of the project, or if you're going to have students help construct the rubric based on the model, you might then have students take that rubric and then fill it out based on the model that you shared. So they have just to help them get familiar with the rubric, and then they have the experience of applying that rubric to media and really internalizing what it looks like to score on the upper end of that rubric. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is scaffolding media creation. So we just sort of ran through the process of designing and implementing a long form media project. But media creation doesn't have to be something you just do once in the classroom, and really to be effective, thinking about like best practices for um, infusing media literacy and creativity and media creation in your classroom. It's really better to give students multiple opportunities to create media and and build that skill set and enhance that skill set, right? In the same way that like we wouldn't have students just like write once throughout the course of the year, right? We give students opportunities to develop their skills, write, revise, reflect on the process, and then apply their new learning to a new context, and then elevate their skills. We want to do that with all forms of communication that are relevant in society today. And we know that students are encountering a lot of information online, on social media, often in the form of video. This is an essential form of communication in our society today. And so we need to teach students how to both decode and analyze film, as well as how to create and communicate effectively with this medium. So part of how we do that is to scaffold media creation in the classroom. And so I would encourage you all to start by keeping it simple and start small. And so that could be something like starting with a simple introduce yourself assignment at the beginning of the school year, or the beginning of the unit, just to give people, students an opportunity to practice. And so that's just creating like a simple video, introducing themselves to class. This can be great for the beginning of the year because it's a great community building activity. You can then run a film fest in class, have students watch each other's videos. And that's a great way for students to learn about each other, uh, bond, build a sense of community that really sets yourself up for success by forming the kind of learning community where students they feel comfortable with each other, they feel confident, they're willing to take risks, and that'll all help with their achievement of learning outcomes throughout the course of the year. So I'll just share an example of like how simple this could be. This is an example of an about me video I created that is just 17 seconds long. So it could be more in depth, but it could also be super simple like this. Okay, so like I said, very simple. And get back to my slides here. And then that's great. Like through creating a simple video like that, students have learned how to access the stock media library. Maybe they've learned how to upload their own media. They've learned how to build a sequence with video clips on the timeline. They've learned how to split clips and trim clips. They've learned how to add text. They've learned how to add music. In this case, audio from the stock media library. And so they've sort of learned all the essential basic elements of a video, pairing video clips or visuals with text and audio to create a simple video. And they haven't had to worry about like learning core content at the same time, right? They get to talk about something they know. It lowers the cognitive load for them, and they can really just focus on learning how to use the editor so that they're set up for success with media creation later in the year. Any of these projects that are in the assignment ideas library are great for this kind of community building, low stakes activity for learning video editing at the beginning of the year. They could create a video introducing themselves to class. They could create a video sharing their summer, share like highlights from their summer, maybe using some media that they captured over the summer. Great way for them to kind of catch up with each other and learn about what they've been up to over the summer, and learn a little bit more about their interests. They could create this dream vacation video, or they talk about a place they'd want to go and use stock media from the stock media library to build those video clips. There's video footage from places all around the world that they can use to create those videos. Or this Where I'm From project is another good one where they create a Where I'm From poem, and then use a voice recording to record the poem, and then pair images and text and music to bring that poem to life. So any of those would work great. And something that we released this winter in January 2024 are new certification courses. So we have certification courses for educators and we have certification courses for students. And so this WeVideo Certified Student Level 1 course, I'm going to show this to you. It's a 90-minute course. Most of that time is built in for creating a video. And basically what students do is they work through this series of tutorial videos. Each video is like 1 to 2 minutes long. Total video time is about 7 minutes. They learn the basics of how to navigate WeVideo, use the classroom tools, access assignments, edit, and then turn in assignments, and view teacher feedback. So they learn all those basics pretty quickly. And then they have an assignment to create a short 1 to 2 minute video. And each of the prompts here, create an About Me video, create a video sharing highlights from your summer, create a dream vacation video. Those align with the activities that I was sharing with you. So as a teacher, you could assign the course for students to learn WeVideo. You don't have to teach it, takes the burden off of you. You don't have to teach them how to edit video. They can just run through this course, and then you can assign them one of those activities to create a video. And then they can submit their videos to get certified. So we will send badges to the teachers to hand out to students, certifying them in their skills as video creators. So that could be like a 2-day lesson at the beginning of the year, and you've already taught students so much through that experience. So that's my sort of first piece of advice, is to start small, keep it simple, give them like an easy video project to create, leverage our online courses to help them learn how to create. And then you might move into like a level 2 video project. So here's, I think, a good example of a level 2 video project where a student made a science documentary. Some other projects that might sort of work for this would be like creating a history documentary or a history biography, an author study, like a biography about an author that you're studying or whose book you're about to read. Those are all assignments that are in the assignment ideas library that are ready for you to assign to students. And they're basically just sort of leveling up in terms of, now we're introducing content. Students are, they've either learned core content directly through class, or they are conducting research to learn about their topic. And then they're constructing a narrative using the information that they've compiled about the topic. And then they're doing a lot of the similar things that they did in that intro video, right? They're taking video footage, building a sequence, adding text, adding audio, music. Um, Maybe they're adding a voice recording. Maybe they're adding sound effects. Like they can level up their video editing a little bit, but not too much, right? Here is so this example, we won't watch this right now, but um, this student created a short video about climate change and a proposed solution for reducing our impact on the climate, as an example there. And then this is an example of sort of a level 3 project, right? So continuing this idea of scaffolding media creation, here's a project where students learned argumentative writing. And this could be in any content area in addition to English language arts. This could happen in the context of history or science, right? They're basically, students are having to formulate an argument, make a uh, and make a claim, and then support it with evidence and reasoning. Um, and so for this one, students conducted research, they formulated a script, they storyboarded, and then they filmed their own original footage of them narrating um, their argument, and then layered that with like animations and video clips and things like that. So it's a little bit more of a complex project, and so just scaffolding those skill sets up to creating something like this can be a great way to sort of get them there. Um, for this project, we looked at a TV show, a PBS TV show called Above the Noise, that explores controversial issues that are relevant to youth. And they explore a point counterpoint rebuttal sort of format as a way to explore debates on either side of the topic or either side of this essential question. And then ultimately sort of to present an argument. And so students had to do that same thing. And so we do that in writing, right? Point, counterpoint, rebuttal. They learned how to then take that and present that kind of format, communicate that kind of format through video. So it ended up being a really powerful project. And coming soon here, within the next month, we will be releasing our second course for both students and educators. So the WeVideo Certified Student Level 2 course that's coming, that'd be a great course to have students run through in the context of a project like this, where they would learn more intermediate and advanced video editing skills that they could apply to a project like this one. And then the last thing I just want to talk about here is how to sort of build a creativity and media literacy infused classroom. So we've already talked about this a little bit in terms of scaffolding projects throughout the course of the year, not just implementing one media making project, but in this case, we talked about 3 different ones that you might scaffold over the course of the year. And then in the context of that, you might make media creation just sort of like a regular tool within the context of your teaching and your pedagogy in your classroom. And so here's a definition of media literacy from the National Association for Media Literacy. Media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. So just like we teach students to critically read text, to decode text, right? In the 21st century, where students are encountering a variety of media and information in a variety of formats, we need to teach them how to analyze the various mediums with which they're encountering information. So if they're encountering information online and social media, and often in the form of video, we need to teach them how to analyze video and evaluate videos, right? And just like we teach them to write as a critical process of becoming literate, we need to teach them how to create and communicate using all forms of communication. So teaching them how to create videos, and through that process, they gain valuable insights into the production of media that helps with the process of analyzing and evaluating the media that they encounter. So these are critical 21st century skills, and some like simple activities that you might weave into the context of your teaching. Here's one. It's design your name activity, where students they create a motion graphic for their name that expresses their personality. Another great one for building community in the beginning of the classroom. Here's one, My Personality GIF, where they take 4 images or video clips or pieces of media that represent them, their interests, hobbies, etc., and then create a GIF like this where you can see all 4 together. We're also running creative challenges every month. So we release a new creative challenge on the first of every month. You can find those on our creative challenge page, wevideo.com/creative challenges. This month, our creative challenge centers around Women's History Month and creating media celebrating women who have led change and made an impact in their field. And you could implement that. You could implement this challenge in any content area, right? It could be a famous author. It could be a scientist, a woman who had an impact in the scientific any scientific field. Literary figures, artists, activists, people who've impacted history, etc. So check those out. Those come out monthly, and we pick a winner and send swag to that classroom. So it's really fun for students and something you can implement every month in your classroom. Each of those challenges comes with an example video, a tutorial video, a submission form to submit media to win prizes, and then also an activity in the assignment ideas library. So I want to just switch over to WeVideo real quick. The slide that I'm showing now is that activity we talked about before, Dream Vacation. And this is just an example of how some of these activities can be adapted to any content area. And it gives students something that's, an activity that's fun and exciting. They get to plan this dream vacation, but then they also get to apply core content knowledge, right? Like planning a budget in a math class or exploring natural phenomenon in a science class, exploring the setting of a story in an English class, or time traveling through history in a history class. Just to encourage you guys to think about how to apply these activities. Um, I've talked a little bit about the assignment ideas library. So that is here. When you sign into WeVideo as a teacher, you'll see the assignment ideas library. Y'all can explore this. All the activities we've talked about are in here and ready to go. For example, if I wanted to assign this Women's History Month activity, I could preview it and simply save this as a draft to one of my classes. We'll pick English Language Arts. And then I'm just going to navigate over to classes and open this English Language Arts class. I'll find it here currently as a draft, and I can edit the assignment and any of the details, including what students are going to create, a video, GIF, or podcast, whether this is going to be an individual or group assignment, and then I can set up groups if I want to. And you can even add a media bin or a starting block. A starting block is going to be a pre-filled template to make editing quicker or scaffold the media creation project for students. So those are some of the options. I'm going to go ahead and publish this, and then that'll be published to my class. And so something I just want to show you all, if you're using, in addition to being able to use the assignment ideas library and have access to all these media creation activities and projects that are pre-built and require little to no prep on your end to assign to students. Another reason to use this tool, I'll just open up this history class. Once I've assigned a project and students have started working on it, I'll see projects that are in progress. I can view progress. I can open up the editor. I can see what they're working on. I can contribute to the project if I want to. I can also add comments. There's this little comment button. So if I drag the playhead and add a comment, it'll add a comment like this one here you see. So you can like add feedback. Students can respond to that. And then finally, the last thing I want to show you here is I'll find a better example of this from my history class. Here's one where I have 8 of 8 projects turned in. So if I review progress, once they're turned in, they get organized together here, and I can review videos, and they're all here together. So I can watch the videos that my students have created and turned in and flip through them, watch them all here, project these to have a film festival in class. And then I have some other options for like returning the work to students. They can keep working, adding subtitles, downloading, or sharing the media. Um, so just wanted to sort of emphasize how you all can use the classes features and assignment ideas library in NextGen for implementing media projects and activities within the context of project-based learning and also just like more generally within the classroom. So yeah, so that brings me to the end of this session. Thank you all so much for joining, and happy creating, and excited to see what you all create. So um, I wish you all the best with that process. And please share what you all create.